Good evening, I'm David Kramer here with Alaska Weather. As always, please visit our website at weather.gov/Alaska. You can get any updates to our forecast or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we might have out for your area. You can also call our weather info line at 1-800-472-0391. Get any updates to the forecast through that means as well. And you can also visit our website or our email link here at the bottom of the page. And you can watch us on YouTube, Twitter, and on Facebook. Starting off, we'll take a quick look at the warnings and advisories that we have out for the state, all up to the north. We'll start off in the northwestern part of the state. We have a winter weather advisory for blowing snow from Wainwright down towards the Point Hope area. That is going to be in effect until 8 p.m. this evening. We also have a winter weather advisory for blowing snow for the northeastern part of the Brooks Range. That is primarily in the corridor of the Dalton Highway, and that is also for blowing snow, reducing those visibilities down to around a half mile, and that is going to be in effect until midnight tonight. And then we have some blizzards warnings up on the northeastern part of the Arctic coastline from the Dead Horse area out towards Kaktovik, and those are going to be in effect until 6 a.m. on Saturday. Further to the south in the central and western part of the interior, starting off to the west, we do have winter weather advisory out for snow, anywhere from 2 to 5 inches. That is going to be in effect from 10 p.m. this evening until 10 p.m. Saturday evening. Further to the east, same kind of conditions. We are expecting winter weather advisory for snow, 2 to 5 inches. And that's going to be a little bit later start time, midnight tonight until midnight on Saturday. As we look down at our breakup map, you can see most of the activity is further to the south. The Tanana River is starting to break up, as well as many locations in the south central part of the state. And then down on the lower Kuskokwim, we do have some areas breaking up there. However, as we get to AKwx and places further to the north, not a lot of activity yet. And while we're on the breakup topics, we'll take a quick look at early breakups across the state. I know many people have traditional times when they expect that river ice will still be safe to cross. However, we want to take a special note this year as we have much warmer conditions and earlier breakup expected. You can see our dashed line running through kind of the interior part of the state. Anywhere to the north of that line, we are expecting breakup of that river ice to happen 10 to 14 days earlier than normal. And south of that line, we are expecting breakup to happen 2 to 3 weeks early. So again, if there's normal dates when you expect to have safe conditions on the river ice, please be mindful that we are expecting breakup to be anywhere from 10 days out to 3 weeks earlier than normal. So take extra precautions when out by the rivers this year. Taking a look now at our fire danger, not a lot, just a little bit here by Delta Junction and down in the interior part of the Copper River Basin. We are expecting higher than normal fire conditions. And then as we move into our satellite imagery, we'll start to look at some of our lows moving through the area, bringing us a lot of the rain. We have one low moving into the northern part of the Gulf that's bringing some rain showers along the North Gulf Coast. We have another low pressure system headed towards southeastern part of the state, bringing some rain to some of those locations in the southern parts of the Gulf. As we look out further to our west, we have a low that is tracking and very slowly through the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula area, bringing some rain to those locations. And then another system just to the south of the central and western Aleutian Islands, bringing some rain there, a little bit colder further to the north, some snow showers expected. As we look at our weather for today, we do have that rain transitioning to snow as we get further to the west, kind of this northerly flow. Our low pressure system staying to the south of the islands for now. As we look further to the east, we have low moving through the Alaska Peninsula, bringing some rain showers up into southwestern part of the state. And that's going to continue into the interior part of the state with that rain. A little bit colder at the higher elevations in the Alaska range, expecting to see more snow as we get into the mountains. But the rest of south central Alaska expecting to see some snow shower or rain showers, with the highest concentration along the North Gulf Coast from this weaker low in the northern part of the Gulf of Alaska. Let's move down into the interior. The more inside waters locations are going to see some rain showers, and that's going to transition to snow as you get further to the north And then finally up in the Brooks Range, we are going to see some snow showers. And then along the Arctic coastline, those blowing snow conditions resulting in the winter weather advisories and blizzard conditions for those locations. Looking into tonight's weather, we are going to see snow, especially central eastern parts of the Brooks Range, down into the interior, the slow moving into the western part of the interior, bringing in that heavier snowfall there. Some snow down in the southwestern part of the state and areas along the North Gulf Coast of the south central locations, transitioning to rain as we get into the northern Gulf, as we have some warmer conditions down there. And then down by the Panhandle area, the very southern portion, still going to see some rain. A lot of the Panhandle clearing up until we get up by the Haines and Skagway area, where we are expecting to see some snow showers there. Way out to the west, our low is now bringing in some rain to the central Aleutian Islands, and still going to see some rain, and that's going to transition over to snow for the western Aleutian Islands, with some of the colder air coming in from that northeasterly direction. For Saturday, similar conditions out for the western Aleutian Islands. Our low pressure system slowly tracking off to the east, bringing rain to the Alaska Peninsula, down into the central Aleutian Islands as well. Moving into the mainland part of the state, a little diminished shower activity, but still some rain showers in southwestern Alaska. Rain and snow as we get into the Alaska Range and out by the Wrangell-St. Elias area. Rain for many locations of the southern portions of the interior, but transitioning over to snow as we get further to the north and east. And then snow along the Arctic coastline. Still going to see some blowing snow conditions Saturday morning, especially in the earlier times of Saturday morning out for the northeastern part of the Arctic coastline. Much of the Panhandle going to clear up, but we will still have some rain further south by the Ketchikan area. Then on Sunday, rain spreading back through much of the southeastern part of the state. Another low pressure system moving into the Gulf now, starting to reinforce that southerly flow of warm air for the Panhandle area. Out over the south central area, not a lot of activity till we get into the Alaska Range, and then in the interior we are going to see more rain showers developing, and then we are going to get back into snow as we get into the Brooks Range and snow along the Arctic coastline. Rain expected for the Aleutians from a new low coming in from the west. For our temperature is going to be in the mid to upper 30s for the Aleutian Islands, Alaska Peninsula, and into the lower 30s stretching out into the interior. Single digits along the Arctic coastline, and then down by freezing for south central, and the mid 30s for the Panhandle Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon getting up to around 50 degrees for the Panhandle. Mid 40s for much of the locations of interior mainland Alaska, and then in just around 10 degrees along the Arctic coastline, and in the lower 40s for the Aleutian Islands. Sunday morning, mid 30s, around 40 for the Aleutians, down a low just below 30 degrees for much of the interior. Single digits again for the Arctic coastline, down just below freezing for the south central area, mid 30s for the Panhandle, getting up to upper 40s for the Panhandle area, mid 40s for much of the interior and south central, and in the teens for the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
We will start off aviation with a look at our flying weather. Starting on Saturday morning, we do have widespread MVFR conditions throughout all the Bering Sea, mainland Alaska, and some areas of IFR that cover quite an extensive area as well, starting up in the northeastern part of the state in the Brooks Range, down through the western part of the interior, down around the YK Delta area, and all throughout the Bering Sea. We have widespread IFR conditions. Out over the Panhandle, not as much IFR, only right up there by Haines and Skagway, but the rest of the Panhandle all down in MVFR conditions Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, a lot of that's going to clear up, a lot more VFR conditions in the Panhandle, but MVFR conditions are going to remain over the majority of mainland Alaska, with only some isolated areas of IFR. Now, as we move out over the Bering Sea, a lot of IFR is going to stick around through much of the day throughout Saturday afternoon as well. Then moving into Sunday, pretty similar situation for the Bering, widespread MVFR conditions with a fair amount of IFR conditions as well, including the Pribilof Islands and down into the central and western Aleutian Islands. Out over mainland Alaska, widespread MVFR conditions as well. And as we get further to the north, more IFR conditions, especially as we get further to the west. And then down in the south central and in the Panhandle, we do have a lot of MVFR for Sunday morning, but not a lot of IFR except for some isolated areas of that IFR conditions. As we move into Sunday afternoon, going to see quite a bit of the MVFR conditions stick around for the Panhandle area, but we're actually going to have a fair amount of clearing out over south central Alaska, giving us some VFR conditions Sunday afternoon. Up through the interior, widespread MVFR conditions with some isolated areas of IFR conditions, especially in and around the Brooks Range. And then out over the Bering Sea, we are going to have continued a lot of IFR conditions. Now for the passes starting up north, AKwx Pass starting off IFR, improving to MVFR, as well as Adigan Pass. Lake Clark and Merrill will also start off IFR, improve to MVFR in the afternoon. Rainy Pass, IFR improving to MVFR, as well as Windy Pass. Isabel Pass will also be IFR, improving to marginal conditions later in the day on Saturday. Mentasta Pass will start off MVFR, improve to VFR conditions. And Dehne Pass will stay MVFR throughout the day, as will Portage. And as we move down to the southeast, Chilkoot and White will both start off IFR, improve all the way to VFR. Taking a look now at our freezing levels, surface freezing line rides through the Panhandle area around south central Alaska. Then out into the Bering Sea, we do have some pockets of warmer air pushing up from the south there for the central Aleutian Islands into the central part of the Bering Sea. As we look at our icing, starting off way off to the west for the central and western Aleutian Islands, above 5,000 feet, some icing expected there. Out over mainland part of the state, primarily areas further to the north, but some of this lighter icing dipping down into the YK Delta area. But above 7,000 feet and then again below 4,000 feet, expecting to see icing in those locations. And then down around the Panhandle area above 6,000 feet there, with the heaviest of that going to be further to the south. So look at our jet stream, starting off near the Panhandle area, just to the south of the Panhandle, southwesterly component of the jet around 75 knots. Then along the west coast of the state, we do have a northerly component of the jet around 60 knots there. Strongest portion of the jet well to our south, getting up to as high as 135 knots out of the west. Down to around 9,000 feet, we have primarily northerly flow out over much of the Bering Sea, 15 to 20 knots for most locations. Getting up to around 30 as we push off way further to the west, but most of the areas around the Bering and Aleutian's pretty light. Southerly flow through much of the eastern part of mainland Alaska, 10 to 20 knots there, strongest as we get further to the west, and northerly flow along the west coast of the state, 15 to 20 knots there. Lighter flow off to the east, and as we get down into the Panhandle, northeasterly flow around 10 knots expected. Dropping down to 3,000 feet, pretty similar flow out by the Panhandle, 10 knots out of a northeasterly direction. Just to the south of that low, however, quite a bit stronger there, 50 knots, but should remain well south of any of the Alaska locations. Out for the eastern part of mainland Alaska, 10 to 20 knots expected there, increasing as we get further to the north, and just off the coast we are seeing speeds jump right up to around 30 knots there. Along the west coast of the state, northerly flow, 10 to 15 knots expected around our low pressure out over the western portion of the state. And as we move out into the Bering Sea, northern and western parts of the Bering Sea, north to northeast flow, 10 to 20 knots, getting stronger as we get further to the south and west. And then easterly flow out over the southern Bering, 10 to 20 knots, strongest out by the Pribilof Islands. Taking a look at our turbulence, not a lot to speak of. Pretty light winds for most locations right along the Arctic coastline. However, we are going to see an area below 2,000 feet. Should still be pretty light. We'll be right back with the marine forecast.
Dual polarization technology is a major upgrade to the current radar system. It allows forecasters a better idea of what's actually out there and can help keep you safe.
Current radar technology transmits and receives information in the horizontal direction, which is very limited. Dual polarization technology, in addition to the horizontal, transmits and receives vertical energy, which allows forecasters to get information about the size, shape, and phase of the precipitation. We can use that information to better determine the precipitation type to expect at your given location.
There you have it. This new technology is currently being installed in radars across the country and is already being used by National Weather Service forecasters to produce better, more accurate forecasts. Learn more here and follow us. Want to know about the future of weather radar? Well, the National Severe Storms Lab has it here with its new phased array radar. Let's check it out.
It's a non-moving radar. It has 4 faces of the antenna, each pointing in different directions. One of the big advantages is that we're seeing so far It can sample the area around the radar in less than a minute, maybe even a half a minute. And this is 5-6 times faster than what they can do today.
NSSL is leading the development of future weather radar with this project. Learn more here and follow us. The Storm Prediction Center is one of the NOAA weather partners. They are located in the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Greg Carbon gives us a glimpse into what the SPC does.
Our mission is to analyze and forecast severe thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds from those thunderstorms across the lower 48 states, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. One of the primary missions of the Storm Prediction Center is the issuance of severe thunderstorm and tornado watches across the country when conditions appear to be coming together to support the development of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes.
The world-class meteorologists in the Storm Prediction Center specialize in severe weather and keeping you safe. Learn more here and follow us.
The National Severe Storms Lab is working on increasing the lead time for severe weather warnings. The national average for tornado warnings is currently 13 minutes, but more notice would be helpful, especially for those in charge of moving large groups to shelter. Warn on Forecast will help forecasters issue hazardous weather warnings earlier. The project will give them more info about the chances of strong winds, large hail, and even tornadoes.
Currently, warnings are created by forecasters looking at the atmosphere outside, understanding its volatility, and then comparing that to how they see the Doppler radar presenting what's going on inside thunderstorms. Warn on Forecast is an idea where we're going to take the massive amounts of satellite, radar, and surface data and stick them all into a very high resolution prediction model. And then by producing new forecasts every 15 or 20 minutes, the forecasters hopefully will be able to use that model to produce warnings that extend out to an hour.
Before the National Weather Service can use this tool, it must be developed and tested. One big challenge will be deciding how to get the model predictions to the forecasters.
I'm going to keep this one very low. I'm just adjusting the track.
These hazardous weather prediction models are going to produce a huge amount of output. And this fire hose of data is just too much for forecasters to handle in real time quickly. So in order to help deal with that, NSSL has developed a related project called Facets. And Facets is the methodology which will enable forecasters to focus very quickly on the most important threats.
Once Warn on Forecast and Facets are proven to be reliable and effective, then forecasters will be better able to inform you of threats nearby. Learn more here and follow us.
The Hazardous Weather Test Bed is located at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. It is used for experiments that will allow forecasters to learn and apply new technologies.
The Hazardous Weather Test Bed is a really unique space throughout all of NOAA. And this is where the researchers and the operational folks come together in a common space to solve operational problems and to test new research tools that the research community is working on. The goal is to accelerate the transfer from research to operations of the newest tools and techniques.
People come from around the world to collaborate on this unique project.
We can bring together not only NOAA people, but also university people, faculty, researchers, private sector meteorologists, folks working in other countries in meteorology, forecasters can all come together and focus on what the problem of the day is with the forecasters.
Each spring, several experiments occur in the Hazardous Weather Test Bed. Learn more here and follow us.
What are you looking at? And what are you ignoring? Did you notice the NOAA logo in the corner? Forecasters have a lot of information in front of them too. Every second counts during severe weather, and decisions about where to focus are constantly being made. This could be even more challenging in the future. Phased array radar will produce 4 to 6 times more information than what we have now, which brings us to the question researchers are hoping to answer. Will more radar information affect forecasters' decisions?
From our past experiments, we've learned a lot about how forecasters think during the warning decision process, but we've also learned that those thought processes are very complex, and for that reason, we need a better way to be able to track forecasters' cognitive activity.
Inbounds and possibly golf ball sized hail.
An eye tracker is a piece of technology that is used to determine in real time where someone's eye gaze is located. And these eye trackers are typically video-based, which means a camera sits below a computer monitor, and with infrared light and vector analysis, we can determine where a person is looking and how their eyes are moving.
Eye tracking is already being used in the medical field and air traffic control. Using similar research methods, NSSL is discovering the benefit for weather forecasting too. Phased array radar will give forecasters a lot more to think about. Understanding their decision-making process will help researchers develop even more user-friendly tools. So what's the benefit for you? Even better weather warnings. To learn more, check us out online and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for the marine section of the forecast. Starting off with a quick look at the ice edge. We still have a lot of north to northeast flow coming through the Bering Strait area down by St. Lawrence Island, resulting in some of the ice to start to push to the south, southwest for the Norton Sound area out by St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait area. However, total ice is not expected to really grow much from that. A lot of it is just moving further to the south under that northerly flow. As we look at the rest of our marine forecast, starting in the southeastern part of the state, we have a northwesterly flow, 15 to 20 knots for most areas around the Panhandle, a little bit lighter as we get up towards the Yakutat area. Seas as high as 15 feet in the eastern part of the Gulf and 3 to 4 feet in the inside waters. As we look into Sunday, flow switching up, becoming more southerly or southeasterly, 10 to 15 knots most locations, seas dropping down to around 10 feet in the eastern Gulf. As we look along the south central area, pretty light flow northerly at around 10 knots for most every location of south central Alaska. Then moving into Sunday, still pretty light flow, especially Cook Inlet area still around 10 knots, getting up to around 15 knots for areas just south of Cordova. And then as we look for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island areas, easterly flow 10 to 15 knots there. Seas getting higher on the Pacific side up to as high as 15 feet. And then on Sunday, flow still pretty light, 10 to 20 knots. Again, strongest on the Pacific side with seas up to as high as 13 feet as we get further to the southwest. For the Aleutian Islands, we have easterly flow 15 to 20 knots in most locations. As we get further off to the west, becoming more northerly, 20 knots there. Seas as high as 15 feet out by the central Aleutians. Then on Sunday, flow still out of a northerly direction, 15 to 20 knots out west, but seas diminishing to around 8 feet there. And then northeasterly flow as we get further towards the east, switching over to southwesterly flow, all pretty light, around 10 knots, getting up to as high as 15 knots near Atka. Then as we look along the west coast of the state, primarily a northerly flow, which is what's helping to push down some of that ice. And that's going to be 20 to 25 knots, a little bit higher as we get out by St. Matthew Island, around 30 knots expected there. Then on Sunday, still northerly flow, 15 to 20 knots most locations, a little bit weaker as we get south of Nunavik Island. And along the Arctic coastline, starting off with the Arctic coast, we have easterly flow 25 to 30 knots, becoming northerly as we get along the west coast of the state, 15 to 20 knots expected there. Then on Sunday, still primarily a northerly component to the wind, 15 to 20 knots. And then along the Arctic coastline, easterly flow, 20 to 25 knots expected. As we look at weather for tonight, we do have a low pressure system skirting just to the south of the central Aleutian Islands, bringing rain to the area. rain off to the west at the western Aleutian Islands as well, transitioning over to snow with a little bit colder winds from that northeasterly direction out there. Looking out over mainland part of the state, we do have a low pressure system pushing into the interior part of the state that's going to transition the central and western parts of the interior over to snow, expecting heavier snowfall there, especially around 10 p.m. to midnight starting, where we will have winter weather advisories for snow in effect for the central western parts of the interior. That's going to continue until 10 p.m. tomorrow evening, out into around midnight tomorrow evening. That is Saturday night. So along the parts of the Brooks Range, we are expecting to see some snow there, and then along the Arctic coastline, snow and blowing snow expected. We do have blizzard warnings out along the northeastern part of this state. That'll be out until 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. Blowing snow advisory out further to the west out until around midnight tonight. And then that's going to be true for the northeastern part of the Brooks Range along the Dalton Highway as well, blowing snow conditions out through this evening. Then down in the south central part of the state, snow showers around much of the area. And as we get along the North Gulf Coast, expecting that to transition over to rain and the warmer temperatures down there. And down in the Panhandle area as well. Most of it staying off into the Gulf of Alaska, but some in the southern portions of the Panhandle. Going to see some rain there, and colder up by the Haines and Skagway area, expecting to see snow showers tonight. For Saturday, much of the Panhandle going to clear out except for those southern locations, still expecting to see some rain. South central Alaska, not a lot of activity until we get up into the mountains. Alaska Range, going to see more snow, and in Wrangell, St. Elias as well. In the central and western parts of the interior, expecting that to start to transition over to rain in those more southern locations. However, as we get further to the north and to the east, we are expecting that to be more snow. Along the Arctic coastline, still going to see that snow and blowing snow conditions up there. Southwest Alaska, going to see some rain showers, and then down for the central eastern Aleutian Islands and for the Alaska Peninsula, expecting to see rain, and rain and snow mix out by the western Aleutians. As we move into Sunday, a new low pressure system bringing more rain and then snow for the western Aleutian Islands expected. Some rain out for the Alaska Peninsula as well on Sunday. Thanks for being with us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.
Today we invited 16 young people from Service High School's culinary program to come in and tour the restaurant. We were aiming to give them a snapshot of both the front of house and the back of house side of the restaurant industry from our perspective here at Bridge. When I first came into this kitchen 6